Good afternoon, YouTube viewers and subscribers. So yesterday, or a couple days ago, when I made the engine trade deal part 1 video regarding this OS FS 120 pre-Surpass engine, I had mentioned about the rocker arm covers and how difficult it was to set the valves on this engine. So what I thought I'd do here is I've got some of my valve setting tools here. I've got my engine sitting here very gently in a vise so I can be held upright and I don't have to mess with it too much. I do need to remove the glow plug because that will help me find top dead center. And I want to just go through some of this real quick and show you the challenges presented when trying to set the valve lash on these engines here. Specifically this one and the OS FS 61 pre-Surpass engine, because as you can see I just removed that rocker cover, and do you see the rocker arm at all? You're probably only going to see it in this overhead shot because it's completely recessed in here, so you really can't even see that. See how they don't protrude at all from there? So I've got my feeler gauges here. These are official OS feeler gauges. These aren't the ones that came with this engine. This is just the set I always use. And I also have the previously mentioned offset wrench here that is required. See how there's just that kind of little bend in there, that little offset, to actually enable you to get in here and get on this. And even then it seems like that offset is almost just really not quite adequate. But anyway, so the two feeler gauges that came with this engine, one is a 0.1 millimeter, which I think you'll be able to read on here maybe. They're pretty faded. And the other is a 0.04 millimeter. Now this one, the 0.1, is being a little bit more rigid and inflexible. I have, see how this side is round and this side is trimmed. I had to trim it off just a little bit there, and you'll see why here in a second. But first what I need to do is get this at the proper orientation for setting the valve. So you always set the valves of an engine with it cold. And here's my intake rocker arm. It just came up, and now I'm going to sit here and look inside my cylinder and look for the piston to come up to top dead center, which is right there. And on these engines, if you don't have the drive washer on here, or this prop washer on here, you can also see that by the orientation of the Woodruff key, because it's always going to be pointed down. So right now this engine is to the point of being able to at least verify the valve lash. So I'm going to use the 0.04, and you can see how flexible this guy is. Really flexible. And there's not a whole lot of room, even with that bend in there, to get in here. But because this one's flexible, you can still actually kind of get in there from this end and slide it in. So I'm going in this one here, and I feel it. Let me see if I can zoom in on this just a little bit more. And I feel it nipping that just a little bit. Now if I go to this one here, it feels like it went in really easily. So now I go to my no-go gauge, and I'm going to use the end that I trimmed, because if I try and use this rounded end, this one is so rigid that it's really hard to tell if you're really even in between the rocker arm and the top of the valve or not. So that's why I trimmed this one up a little bit here, and I can actually see it a little bit better, and I cannot get in there. So the intake rocker arm is set properly on this engine. Let's check it on this one, or the exhaust. And okay, so this one slides in really easily on the exhaust. So the only one I really need to adjust is this one, and I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to attempt to loosen this nut, adjusting nut. so you don't really get a whole lot of room to turn this either. Okay, so I think I've got that adjusting nut loosened up enough so I can actually get on here and make this minute adjustment. And I want to be able to feel, maybe I need to use this. Okay, I want to be able to feel that nipping that just a little bit. Okay, now it's nipping it. Now the kicker is hold this in position while I try and tighten this nut. And you don't have to put a whole lot of force on it. Just a little bit there. So it's nipping, and if that's nipping, I'm absolutely certain I'm not going to be able to get this in here. Okay, so we seem good there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate this through a few times. When you hear that sound, it's because I put oil in this engine the other day and it just spit a bunch out on me. So I'm going to rotate it through, round and round we go. Intake valve or a rocker arm is coming up. Now I need to check for my top dead center again. And right there is top dead center. Now I can go back and check the go gauge on both of them again. And this is the same process for any engine, any four-stroke engine. It's just because of the design of this, it makes it a little more tedious. So obviously I didn't change anything here, so that one's going to be good. But you always want to check them. And that one's just nipping, and I feel that, so I'm not even going to bother trying to stick this one in there because I know it isn't going to go. So now I'm convinced that the valve lash is set properly. So now that I've got this engine internally lubricated and heated from the other day, I've got the rocker arms or the valve lash set. Now I can actually put this on the stand and do a first run, an initial run, to get all the rest of this congealed dried caster in this engine loosened up, and I'll flush it out with oil and we'll take it from there. I'm pretty sure these bearings are fine and they'll probably be good from that point on. But anyway, that was just a quickie on how to set the valve lash on a four-stroke engine, but also the challenges of setting the lash on one of these older OS pre-Surpass engines.